All right, EntreArchitect community, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it's time for the EntreArchitect Context and Clarity live conversation for Thursday, October 20th, 2022. As you get here, say hi. Let us know that you're here, even if you're just planning to listen in or if you're multitasking right now, that's okay. At least let us know that you're here and let us know where here is for you. Where are you when you join these conversations? If we've never met before, my name is Jeff. I'm in Indianapolis. I come here every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for one reason, so that we can find clarity around the things that matter most to you, the architect. It doesn't matter if you're the employee of a firm or you own your own firm. Maybe you said 2022 is my year and you're on the runway to starting your own thing. Or maybe you have owned your own firm for a year or 10 years or 27 years and you're starting to rethink or reimagine what that firm could or maybe even should be. All of the topics that we cover, one topic every day, they all fall under the broad umbrella of the business of architecture, and they're all the need-to-know topics for the success of entrepreneur architects just like you. So
Hey, everybody. If you are joining us right now, Jeff's microphone pops in and out, so we're very sorry about that. Jeff will pop back on in just a second. We are... Okay, Jeff. Sorry about that.
No, thanks for the warning. Thanks for the heads up. It may be an adventure today. So what happens when I hit refresh like that, I lose all of the comments that were in the queue. So I'm not sure who was in first, but many have already noticed that things look a little bit different today. I am joined today not by Catherine McPhail as usual. I'm joined by Mandy Freeland. Hi, Mandy.
Hi, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me co-host with you.
No, I'm glad that you're here. I like it when you are the guest host. You bring a different perspective and a different part of the country, and all of these different things. So it's fun. It's fun to mix it up a little bit. Glad that you're here. Catherine is off at Fiddle Camp, which I think is very cool as well. She's for those of you that don't know, she's a fiddler, and she's having a good time at Fiddle Camp right now. So again, thanks for being here. And who's first on the screen today?
I think Yoko was first on today. Let me see. Scroll back up. Jessica Wilson Christensen from LA.
All right.
And Yoko was second.
Excellent. That's fun. Jessica, congratulations. You are the winner of today's John Kinney Memorial Crocheted Bathtub Award, and Yoko with the I don't know if we have a second place prize, but that's a good 1-2 punch there. Great to have both of you in here early for this conversation. If you are on Facebook right now and you're commenting away and saying, hey, why aren't my comments showing up like Chris's are or like Maria's or like Barry's are? It's because you're in a private Facebook group, and Facebook has privacy policies, which, whether we agree with them or not, I think we probably agree with them, but whether we do or not, we have no control over. So you can give Facebook permission to talk to Restream, which is the platform that we use here, in just a couple of clicks. There is a URL at the bottom left of your screen right now. Open up another tab on your browser, type in chat.restream.io/FB, like Facebook. And with a couple of clicks, you can give Facebook permission for your name, your likeness, and your comments to show up here on the screen like Yoko's and others. So chat.restream.io/FB. So that is the link to visit to solve all of your problems, or at least the ones that we know about. So let's see. Okay, so it looks like Chad was maybe in first. We have a recount. Is that what it was?
Yeah, he was first. So I've got the Facebook comments showing, and he says I'm first in Facebook. Woohoo! So yay, Chad.
All right. We may have to break this out for different platforms, because I have no idea how the technology works, but things happen differently on the different platforms. So welcome to all of you. great to have you here. In case you have missed this entire week of context and clarity conversations, we're covering a topic this week that's been asked for a long time. Hey, we need to talk about mentors, mentorship, mentoring. And so it's taken us quite a while to find just the right person for our Context and Clarity Live guest. And I think we...
Oh no, Jeff went out again. So we're talking about mentorship. Sorry, Jeff. He's going to pop off and pop back on, and it might happen a few times today. He's having some trouble with his microphone, so he'll come back on, and he's almost back. There he is. Okay, we were just talking about how we need to talk about mentorship, Jeff.
Yeah. So if you haven't figured this out yet, anytime Mandy starts, it's like she's miming something or we're playing charades. It's to tell me that my audio has gone out for some reason. Got tech issues, but that's part of the live environment here. So bear with us as we work through some of those as they pop up. But yes, mentorship.
We're tag teaming this today, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good. It's good that you're on your toes and keeping things in line here. So we'll jump into this and we'll just see how it works out as we go. So with that, we've had our guest in the back in the green room for quite a while. He may have eaten all of the peanut M&Ms, the green peanut M&Ms that we've left back there for him by now. So we better bring him out before he gets discouraged about the lack of snacks. So our guest today is an architect, a leader, and a mentor. He volunteers in both the NOMA Project Pipeline Program and the ACE Mentorship Program. He started mentorship programs at the University of Illinois at Chicago, the Illinois Institute of Technology, and the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Now he's pioneering Nexus, a virtual national mentorship program for emerging professionals. And he's also the co-director of AIA Chicago's Bridge Mentorship Program. Do you see how many times mentor and mentorship came up in that introduction? I think we've got the right person here. Carl Sergio, welcome to Context and Clarity Live.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Yes, obviously you can see where my heart lies. I would say I doubled down on it in 2020, as a kind of direct response to the world that we were living through at that time. And it just seemed like the obvious answer, the way that I could make a difference. And I hope that I am.
Yeah, I love that. And so that's interesting that you say that, because Context and Clarity came about at that same time. Context and Clarity came about as a response to everything that was happening and giving people, different purpose, but giving people a place to connect online here as a community. So not a coincidence, I don't think, that those things came about at the same time.
Yeah, not at all.
Maybe the perfect place to start this conversation is just by talking about, and this is for those of you who have not been around all week as we've had these context and clarity conversations, this is actually where we started the week with asking the question, what is mentorship? And so we went through, that question and came up with a lot of variations and asked things like, is mentoring different than training, coaching, managing, any other ings we could come up with that happen in firms? So if I were to put that question to you, Carl, what would you say if I asked, what is mentorship?
Yeah. And the other thing you touched on is there's a lot of kind of nuanced differences and other kind of related words or, ways to approach it, which I'd love to talk about as well. But I mean, broadly speaking, mentorship is just somebody giving of their time and talent to somebody else and investing, what they've experienced in somebody else's professional development and, potentially personal development as well.
So you mentioned, the nuances and everything else. When you're thinking about mentorship, and I rattled off a lot of different programs that you've been
Yeah.
involved in, a lot of different initiatives. What is, when you're looking at it, and I guess I should, if I zoom out a little bit too, I think sometimes we think about mentorship programs within a firm. And sometimes we think about it, obviously there were several there in schools, university level schools, ACEs in high schools.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's professional level. What do you see out there when you're looking at all of the different things that are happening? Firms, schools, associations, profession level, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most impactful effort that you see? And I mean, you could zoom all the way back into a person to person situation, but where does it all start?
Good question. My experience really started on an individual level for sure, just mentoring a couple of high school students and seeing the impact that I could have there on an individual level. But really, and this is just the way my brain works, whether it's me being an architect or not, but I'm always, kind of thinking about the greater system. Like there's a quote about like the object in the room in the house in the, city, whatever it is. And I just immediately thought like, okay, if these students, they're like, I'm here kind of solving some individual problems for them, but what is the kind of systemic issue here that is causing these problems in the first place? Or, what are systemic answers that can address these problems on a larger scale rather than, I can't help but just think, I can only have so much impact on one individual at a time, versus starting these programs and leading programs and mentoring others, but then also encouraging those mentees to be mentors. That's the best way that I can think of to kind of multiply myself and make a larger, broader impact.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you started with identifying some high school students, or at least that was an initial relationship. Maybe I should ask that question. How did you find these or high school students? Was it through
Yeah.
ACE?
There is a local organization here in Chicago called Erie Neighborhood House, and my childhood best friend was a program director there, and he ran after-school programs, and he was looking for people across all kind of industries to be mentors for his students, and his students specifically were I don't know if it was 50-50, but, let's say 50-50 African American and Latino. And, those demographics of students that were there were either, some of them only had one parent, some of them had two parents that were working two jobs. And either way, they were lacking, the role models and the support that they needed to get through school, but also get into college and even think about applying. Most of them were the first, in their family to ever apply to college. And so it was just, it was just immediately like very present to me what they were going through and how I could individually, personally make a difference in their lives. And it was really rewarding. But, again, I just immediately thought about the larger picture, like, okay, long-term speaking, like, in the big picture sense, like I'm not making any lasting impact here. So, what can I do to have a lasting, larger impact? And I think that was really the thing that kind of got me on the path that I'm on today.
Is there another question that we tackled this week was, who helped you get to where you are today? So if I were to pose that question to you, did you have mentors that you would think back and say, yeah, this is somebody that helped me? And I guess another direction we went with that question was those people that we say that helped us. And a lot of people, as we were having that conversation, they'd name off a high school teacher, or there's a wide variety. But one question was, did those people see themselves as mentors to us,
Right.
which, gleaned some interesting results as well. So how about you? How'd you get to where you are today, and who helped?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, have identified those individuals over the years because I really returned to them in my mind and even periodically thank some of them as well for getting me to where I am. Even just some of the people that originally hired me for internships and took a chance on a, inexperienced idiot to hire me and come work in their office. Getting those first jobs made all the difference. But I even had a professor in college I had a psychology degree, and he was a social psych professor, and he just had a great an interesting way of looking at the world. He was South African. He had fought in the military there, and he just became a great personal friend and really helped kind of guide me through a lot of things during college, because I had no idea what I wanted to do or where I was going at that time. But I mean, there's also obvious things like your parents, who are always doing their best to kind of, nudge you in the right direction, sometimes aggressively, sometimes passively. But both of mine have always been like really supportive. And my dad in particular is interesting because we're kind of very alike in some ways, very different in others. And he was always recognizing and appreciative of the ways that I was different, and still trying to encourage those interests without being too heavy-handed about it. But even now, like, I have a lot of people in my life that I would maybe or maybe not consider mentors in the kind of, capital M sense, but there's still like a network of people that I know that I can rely on for support, whether it's moral support or advice, and practical advice, general advice, what have you. But that's one thing I advocate a lot is, having a whole suite of people that you can rely on, because a lot of times they come from very different perspectives. Some of them may be within your firm. Some of them may not even be architects, which can be a good thing. So I have a lot of people that I think I can look to for kind of different things that I might need, or different, seasons of life too.
Yeah, I love that point. It's, do all of our mentors need to be in architecture, right? Or, because there's so much more. And I think this is one of the dangers that we can get into in this profession. And we talked, I guess it was several months ago now, earlier this year, with Jake and Aaron from Out of Architecture, and they talk about this noun problem, right? It's we're so stuck on the term architect that it can force us to have blinders on. So I love the idea that maybe a mentor doesn't have to be someone at our firm, someone at AIA, wherever we encounter them inside the profession.
Well, I think also, to that point, and this is a larger conversation, about what kind of defines an architect, even in a sort of NCARB, licensure sense.
Yeah, sure.
What technically defines an architect. But I'm a huge proponent of trying to keep more people, within the umbrella, and keep more people within the field, and being more inclusive, so that they're not feeling like, okay, because I'm not a capital A licensed architect, I'm not, part of the field. I don't get to play with everyone else at the playground. And so there are a lot of people too that, I think are great mentors because they're not on that capital A architecture path, because they have taken alternate routes, and they've navigated that, that period of their career where they had to decide, like, do I want to keep working at a firm? Like, what do I really want to do? How do I get off of this path? How do I start my own practice? Or how do I, get into this other related field? How do I still stay connected to architecture if I want to be? And so those people have really great perspectives, even if that's not the direction that you're wanting to go. They've had a lot of experience and learned a lot through that process, versus just kind of staying on the train. And they can be really great mentors for sure.
Mandy, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, this morning in our sort of all week in our conversations, but this morning also we were talking about the commitment level of mentors, mentees, and just the difference between what a mentor is, what an advisor is, and what a coach is. And we did go into coaching and advising, and you also mentioned advising and mentoring. I'm interested in your perspective on what the differences between the three.
Yeah. I haven't thought as much about the term advising. I mean, I mostly focus on the dichotomy between coaching and mentoring. And to name drop my friend Janine Chastain, and I know that she would disagree with me a little bit, but because she's working hard on mentorship within firms. And for me, I think it's rare and difficult to have kind of true mentorship within a firm, because you are working together, or you're working with other same coworkers. It's hard to have a kind of neutral third party perspective and like open, honest conversations with someone who is in your firm, unless your firm is above a certain size. If you have multiple offices, one thing I've been able to do working for larger firms is connect with people in other offices so that we don't have any direct reports in common. We don't have any kind of skin in that game. So we're able to be a little more frank with each other. And that helps a lot. So all that is to say that I think it's a lot more common to have a coach when it's within your firm, because that tends to be much more kind of concrete, practical, short-term focused. It's much more about kind of development of specific skills or aptitudes to pursue a promotion, to pursue a new role, to, obviously to grow within your firm. But, I think the true mentorship conversations, which I try to encourage more in our programs, is just really, backing away as much as possible at like a 30,000 foot view. Like, who am I? Where am I going with my life? What am I doing? Like those kind of questions I think are good to ask yourself, but they're also good to be able to have conversations about. And you can't talk to your principal about how you may not want to be an architect anymore, or how you hate your boss, or, something like that. So I think it's, I think that kind of highlights the difference there between mentor and coach, generally speaking. Again, Janine is still focused on mentorship within firms, and it does happen. It's just, I think, harder.
Yeah. In the comments, Matthew is saying exactly, because the perspective that you just shared, Carl, is one that's been shared in our conversations this week. And I don't know if you call that a conflict of interest necessarily, but when there's project success or financial success, or all those things that happen, and all those dynamics that are happening inside of a firm, there are definitely some in our community that share that exact same perspective, that, hey, is it really possible when this is at stake? And I love that example. You can't go to the principal and say, I hate my boss, especially if they're the ones that you're reporting to, I guess. Chad has a great comment. It's a little bit long to get up on the screen, but I think it really encompasses a lot of people's thought process. And I know that, Mandy, the two of you and Carl were talking about this a lot backstage as I was refreshing, trying to get my settings to work. You want to tackle Chad's comment there?
Sure. I'll read his comment, and then we can talk about what we were talking about backstage, which is along the same lines. Yeah. So Chad says, what are your thoughts on the lack of experienced mentors? What I mean is, I'm a mentor to several individuals, but I'm only really a few steps ahead of them. There are many boomers, sorry for the term, that could be mentors, but just won't. And so we had a conversation earlier this morning on Clubhouse about how do you teach people how to be mentors? And kind of what Chad is saying is he's only a couple years ahead, maybe a few steps ahead of people that he's mentoring. But there may be a lack of mentors in the generation in front of us. And kind of backstage before we got the conversation started, Carla and I were talking about us in our phase of career taking that step to mentorship, to becoming mentors, when maybe we didn't have mentors ourselves. And so we're just unsure how to do it. So Carl, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and there's a lot in here that we could go into.
A lot.
I mean, because even one of the things I want to touch on is actually, I think Chad is kind of saying that maybe it's a bad thing that he's really only a few steps ahead of the people that he's mentoring. But I mean, that's really a huge opportunity that most people don't think about, is what they call like a near peer mentor. Somebody that's going to be with you throughout your career, and they're always going to be a couple steps ahead of you, and they're always going to have just gone through what you're now trying to go through, and they are really, there's no better resource in a lot of ways than to have that person who's willing to, lend a hand directly behind them as they're climbing the ladder and you're climbing with them. So I do want to, kind of throw that plug in there for near peers. Because even in our program, we get everyone to form lateral relationships, and I think those are more important in a lot of ways than the vertical ones over the long term. To go back to the mentor thing, I mean, I'm curious to what Chad's struggle is about the mentors that aren't interested in doing it, because that to me would be indicative that they're probably not going to be a good mentor anyway. Because your heart really does have to be in it to give of your time and energy to somebody else, to really invest in them and to take that time out to talk on a regular basis. And I think also that, a lot of people don't think of themselves, as you mentioned, they don't think of themselves as mentors. And I think there are a lot more people out there that could be good mentors than we often realize. Sometimes for us on an individual basis, it just helps to get out there and, to just network, to meet more people, to, just keep having these accidental collisions until you find somebody you really connect with. But it's also, you're not looking for like a lifelong mentor. You don't need, this is not a marriage. Like, you just need, somebody that can maybe help you get through this little season of your life or this one bump in the road, and then maybe you'll find somebody else. So I think maybe, it's easy to put a lot of pressure on the situation to like, I have to find a mentor. And then you find this person that you're just dying to talk to. And it's like, will you be my mentor? But you don't really have to have that conversation even, it's just like, hey, I really love what you're doing. And I'm really interested in your point of view or your career experience or whatever. Like, I would love to get you coffee or buy you lunch or whatever. And I don't think it's very common that people will say no to that. And you just go from there, and you can, like I said, you can have a lot of people simultaneously that are kind of in your portfolio or your cheering squad of mentors.
Yeah. I'm going to give a shout out to a friend of mine, Dr. Anna Stumpf. She calls herself the Golden Ticket Professor. She speaks quite a bit now, and I don't know that she's teaching as much right now as she has in the past, but the idea of the golden ticket is, and this is of course directed at students, but she says as a student, you have this golden ticket, and your golden ticket is that you can call anybody or, send a LinkedIn request to anybody or an email or whatever to anybody and say, hey, listen, I'm a student. I see what you're doing. I'd like to learn from you about what you're doing. Will you help me? And she says, just about everybody will say yes to that. And that's the golden ticket part. You're the student, you're reaching out, and people will say yes because you're a student. But I also think, if someone came to me and said, I'm a generation maybe older than both of you, so I'll be the old guy in the room here. If somebody came to me and said, hey, listen, I really like what you're doing. I'd really like to learn from what you're doing. Am I going to say no to them?
Right.
Probably not. Now I may be limited on time. I'll definitely have to set some boundaries, but I think, I think that's one of the questions is, and you've got a lot of experience in this, obviously, Carl, as you work in these, the different programs and starting different programs, but what's the process of going out and finding somebody? And I guess this is two ways, right? I'm thinking about it in terms of, how does someone that needs a mentor, how do they find somebody? But what if I am interested in mentoring somebody, or at least making myself available? What's the process for making these connections that you're talking about?
That's a great question too. And I think as a mentor, it helps to just be open and to approach people as often as possible, even if it is, within your firm. And I think, those are the people that are asking their employees to get coffee or to get lunch, or walking over and asking how they're doing, or just being personable, making conversation, which is more difficult as many of us are working from home so many days a week. You don't have those kind of incidental collisions anymore. But I will say that we're really blessed here in Chicago to have a lot of amazing AIA fellows in particular that are mentoring in my program. So it's kind of, it's easy for me to understand, but it's hard for me to say what to do for other kind of markets that have, a smaller, I think, pool of potential mentors. One thing I wanted to say too, though, to Chad's other comment was just about that there still is, I think, a mindset out there that is slowly shifting with generations about, I had to go through this, so you should have to go through it too. Like, I was hardened in the fire, like pressure makes diamonds. I struggled through my career, and that's the best thing for you is to just, struggle as well. And I don't buy that at all. I don't believe it. And I don't think it's kind. My wife actually got that treatment from the HR director of all people, who was the only other woman really in the company. And, basically told her, like, I earned my stripes the hard way. It was in the manufacturing world and operations. And, that was her approach, was like, I'm not going to lend you a hand because I had it really hard, and you should have it really hard too, because that's the way it is. And I just don't think that's true.
That comment, that attitude, you may have to reel me back in here, but that irritates me more than just about anything else in the profession, because, and you're exactly right. There are a lot of people that we talked about the SciArc debacle with the
Yes.
how to
Yes,
be in
exactly.
an office, that
Yes.
panel, it came up there, right? And that
Yes.
blew up on them, and we've seen where that's gone.
That's
And
exactly it.
the thing that really gets me about that is that the majority of the people that say that are parents. This is gross overgeneralization, but they're of a generation that they have kids, and every single one of them says, I want my kid's life to be better than mine. Their quality of life, their standard of living, whatever. And then they turn around, they pull crap like that out of their bag. And that's insane, right?
Yeah.
It's ironic, it's hypocritical, and it's something that's got to be flushed out of this profession. And I am glad. I think you're right. I think it is a generational change, but it's why, I've got exposure right now for the first time. I'm teaching an undergrad class. I usually have I also have the graduate level, but I'm exposed to undergrads right now.
Mm-hmm.
And these undergrads are, they've seen the SciArc thing, and they've heard this, and they're terrified that they're going to go work in a firm somewhere where they're not going to be respected. They're going to be treated like this, and they see what it is for what it is. The toxicity there. And if any of us are worried about the future of the profession, this is the first thing that's got to change.
Yeah.
And I think, Chad goes on to talk about the award-winning successful 60 pluses. If they're not going to open up and share, they're not only doing a disservice to their employees or whatever, but they're doing a disservice to the profession. And I would say open up the AIA code of ethics and let's start talking.
Yeah.
They're
They're doing a disservice to themselves too.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the core tenets of the College of Fellows to mentor the next generation. And
exactly.
I think they themselves have identified that they're not doing that as well as they could be. And I give a lot of credit to their leadership, particularly Francis Helsband, who is really working very hard and diligently on getting the College of Fellows a lot more connected and invested in the next generation, in their local chapters, in mentorship programs, in mentoring relationships. And I think it is going to take a long time, for that kind of cultural, generational approach to really change, and even for people like Francis to, make a lasting change within the College of Fellows. But I do feel like things are headed the right direction, at least. And the one other thing I would say to Chad too is I just feel like if you lower your bar in a good way, I think that there are a lot more people that can be at least short-term mentors. Maybe not in a proper sense, but I've had a lot of mentors that were just coworker friends that, maybe they were, plenty of them were younger than me, but they were further along in their career, or they had been at, my firm longer, and I still had a lot to learn from them. And so there were periods of time where, there were a lot of different people that I bounced off of in order to kind of continue getting ahead and to continue understanding, how they got through their particular bumps in the road.
Hey, Carl, you mentioned the College of Fellows a few times, and a lot of our audience they're not actually AIA members. Or they can, or maybe they were in the past, but I'm thinking a lot of them are not familiar with the College of Fellows, and just because you keep bringing it up, and I know that becoming a fellow is a very tough process. To become a fellow, you have to earn it, literally, to get there. But can you talk about that and how the College of Fellows in AIA is involved in mentorship? I'm just bringing this up because you mentioned a few times.
Yeah.
So just to kind of explain what your thought process is.
Yeah, well, to back up a little bit, like the College of Fellows is about 3,000 members out of the 100-ish thousand AIA members. So, roughly 3% have been elevated to that level, and they've achieved it through, excellence in practice or leadership or education. But I think the interesting thing, which I've, experienced more in other cities rather than Chicago per se, is that getting fellowship can be a kind of feather in your cap, like a sort of 1 foot into retirement. And this is, your kind of crowning achievement. But especially here in Chicago, and, if you look at like Pascal Sablan, who you've had on the show, the people that are in their mid to early 40s or barely 40 that are now becoming fellows because they're really being recognized for their achievements, and they're also being encouraged to pursue fellowship. And I think that is really helping the College of Fellows tremendously to, inject some younger perspectives and energy and new life and people that really do care about mentorship. So I think that's one of the challenges is that, oftentimes if you're getting somebody who really is kind of putting that capstone on their career, they're not really necessarily looking to reinvest themselves or renew their career with that fellowship. But, again, here, I think our Bridge mentorship program, the fellows just find an absolute renewed energy for their entire career that they have not felt in decades. Once they start mentoring, once they get involved in the program and connected to emerging professionals, and, seeing that vitality and energy and excitement really feeds them as well. So it's amazing. It's just something that I wish more people realized, because actually being a mentor is getting, being a good mentor in a good mentoring relationship is getting as much as you're giving. It's not like you're there to just give and give and give. Like, it is very much a two-way relationship, and you should be getting as much as you're giving.
I think that's an important. Sorry, go ahead, Mandy.
Oh, I just wanted to highlight, just because we're on the same topic of AIA and the College of Fellows. Do you want to talk about the Young Architects Forum and College of Fellows newly launched Align Mentorship Program?
Yeah, I could talk about that among other
just
other
to give one example of
sure,
what like a structured mentorship program looks like.
Yeah, Align is, I think, still in its infancy. It's maybe a couple years old, and it's focused on connecting YAF national members, typically with College of Fellows in some small group mentorship and long-term relationships to help those YAF members kind of progress through their career. Many of them are still pretty early career. Some of them are maybe mid-career, but the name was even, I can't take credit for the name or the program, but I know enough to say that, the name was even born out of kind of figuring out what your North Star is in your career and sort of, taking a really hard stance on where you're headed and figuring out how to maximize your contribution as an architect, but also as an AIA member, over the course of the rest of your career. And so the long-term relationships, the small groups in that program, really kind of help everyone, to foster those conversations and to help them clarify what they're interested in, where they're going, how to get there, and so on. And reading Chad's comments as well.
Yeah. We have a troll in the room, which I'll try to deal with.
Oh, I am so sorry.
No worries.
I'm supposed to be monitoring that.
No, it's
wow, those popped up fast.
Yeah.
They were diligent. So,
well, at first I was thinking, networking and mentoring is kind of like dating, I suppose.
I can't. Okay.
I think they're blocked now. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, it's a live show. We work without a net, and I think YouTube is a particularly vulnerable place for the trolls to come in. So it is what it is. But you mentioned what I think is a really important point, or at least have touched on it a bit. Is I like when you said that maybe you wished more fellows would get involved in these types of programs because many are feeling energized and things like that. And we have talked this week about what we've called the two-way mentorship. And I know that there are people in our community that are really benefiting from those types of relationships. Hey, I'm a quote unquote older and I'm mentoring someone that's younger, but the younger person is also mentoring me. And I love that part of the discussion because it's, I look at, like I said, I'm teaching an undergrad section this semester for the first time. I learn things from these undergrads, they're 30 years younger than I am. But there's a lot for me to learn from them. So what's the key to getting these things started, these programs started, or finding the right person?
Getting programs started, properly speaking, can be a bit of effort. But, I think it's actually a lot easier than most people think. There's just kind of a few sort of bits and pieces to it. And one thing that I have mentioned, specifically like in New York, when my friend Bryn Marie was starting the Torch program, I said, okay, you're in New York City. I get that your interest and the draw is in like finding, these big name fellows. Like, can I go get David Chipperfield to be a fellow, a mentor? Don't worry about that because like they aren't necessarily, being famous and a great designer, great architect is not synonymous with being a great mentor. But I think, I'm discovering more and more how much latent interest there is in AIA chapters all across the country in building programs. But the biggest thing is, they don't know where to get started. And that is one thing I'm really hoping to focus on in the coming couple of years, is to really put together a roadmap and be able to hand it out more so that people can start something in their chapter, and that they can kind of answer those, handful of questions and concerns about how to begin. And it doesn't take much. It doesn't take many people. It just takes getting a few people in a room and having a conversation and going from there. And especially during the pandemic, I can't tell you how happy everyone was to just get together and have a chance to talk and decompress. Even if we were doing it virtually, it was the highlight of our month for many of us, and we weathered the pandemic together. And then, 2 years, a year and a half later, we were able to finally get together again in person, which was just like this kind of amazing homecoming sort of feeling. So it's been great to build that network and that community of people. So some of it is really just about community building and finding other people who are interested. And I would always suggest that, your local AIA chapter is the first place to start. And certainly, if you can figure out who your YAF or NAC representative is, locally or statewide, regionally, they're usually the ones that are connected. They're the ones that have, all the energy and interest, and they're a great place to start as well. That's always who I direct people to, is like, okay, let's find out who your YAF, your young architect is, and go from there.
So the acronyms, Carl.
Yeah.
For those that don't know,
So
I know
many.
it comes out of my mouth too. YAF is the Young Architects Forum. It's a member group of AIA National. And those that's the people who are licensed to 10 years post-licensure. And then NAC, he did say NAC as well. NAC is also a member group. It's the National Associates Committee. And that is that's people who have graduated up to their license. So, and in the process of licensure. And that's that. So when he says YAF and NAC, it comes out faster when you say it one syllable.
Yeah.
But that's what those are. So there are representatives to every state. If you are interested, it's an AIA thing. And so just taking a total step back, Carl and I served on YAF together. We were both representatives of our regions. And I served 2020 and 2021 as a representative to California. Right. And you were
I was
there
a year prior.
Yeah.
So I was 19 and 20. Yeah. For Illinois.
Yeah. But just so it comes out of our mouth pretty fluidly. But if you aren't in AIA and don't know, that's what it means. All the acronyms. And if we ever say acronyms that you don't know, just ask.
Yeah.
Because AIA is like a dictionary of acronyms.
Yeah,
but I did want to bring up.
I do have the dictionary. I can share it.
There is one. Yeah.
There is one.
You did say community, and I did want to bring that up in finding a community for mentors or mentees. And I did want to bring up something that has come up in our earlier conversations about finding either a mentor or a mentee of someone of the same background or similar background, or maybe similar, same gender or same socioeconomic background or origin, coming from another country, like foreign, any of that stuff. What do you think about that?
I have a lot of thoughts about that. I think it's critical to somebody if they think that it is critical, if they're really focused on that. If, I understand as much as I can understand that, people want somebody that looks like them, that represents their same, values or culture, and that has been through the same struggles and can relate in those ways. And, to that point, we are working hard to keep a good balance of mentors in our program that, from just a diversity perspective, and that's a struggle now because we don't, most of the fellows are still old white men. Fine. That's a long tail problem that we will solve over the coming decades to a certain degree. But also, I always go back to this, to one particular conversation I had a few years ago now. I would name the person because she's somewhat prominent, but I don't want to, just in case either of them are embarrassed by this anecdote. But we had a mentoring relationship with a young African-American woman, an old white man who I didn't really know at the time. He was new to our program, and he was outwardly, I would say, as stuffy as you could imagine. And she, like, both of them had a great conversation, really hit it off, and wanted to be paired together. And I thought, like, okay, are you sure? Are you telling me is that really the person you're talking about? And I put them together, and at the end of the program, she just told me how wonderful he was and how, what a great relationship they had, how, what a wonderful mentor he was. And it was just really eye-opening to me that they both got so much out of that relationship, and that she, just felt really like it was okay to have an old white man mentor, and she got a lot out of him, and he is a wonderful guy. But it was just, it was a really interesting kind of other side of the coin to see that, like, thankfully, since most of our mentors and fellows still are of that demographic, that now, it gives me a new perspective to emphasize to people, like, really anybody can be a mentor. Anybody has a lot to offer you, even if they're not on the same path as you, even if they don't look like you, even if you don't have the same kind of shared set of experiences. And, I think that, again, lowers the bar in a good way for who, your potential mentors out there can be.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I've been thinking about this a lot this week because I think it was Yoko brought this up. She said in one of our earlier conversations this week, she said that she thinks that there should be opposite mentors, sort of as you just described, if I can say it in that way. And so I've been thinking about that, and I've thought about, of all the topics that we discuss, we touch on probably not enough, but we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and topics like that. And I always think I try to be careful because I am the proverbial old white guy in the room now.
Yeah, I will be one day too.
You will be one day. And, we all have a tendency to stay in our bubbles. And so I love the fact that if we're really open to it, and we have, and I'm not saying all mentors should be opposite mentors as you described and as Yoko was saying, but I think there's a ton of value to that because, if, not to make this uncomfortable or call anybody out, but I've got a lot to learn from Mandy because I cannot share Mandy's experience. It is just not possible for me to share Mandy's experience. So I can learn a lot from talking to Mandy. We've got a lot of similarities. We've got a lot of shared interests and things like that. But I think there's a ton of value to that as well. So anybody that's out there, I wouldn't be afraid to, again, I think it has to be the right match. This is probably the case all the time. And you can speak to that better than I, but I love that idea.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, it's just less of a problem than I thought it would be, because right now, even just the last couple of years, we are seeing such an explosion in the diversity of our applicants and participants. This year in our Bridge mentorship program, somebody stood back at the beginning session, and this was just a gathering of the mentees, but he said, actually, Carl is the only straight white man in the room. And I was like, wow, okay. Sorry, I guess. But, it was really like, we didn't control for that. We weren't looking to specifically have a super diverse group of people. It just emerged from who applied and who's looking for mentors. But it's great that those relationships can still work out because we do have a super diverse pool of mentees, of young professionals looking for mentors. And again, for, a few more decades, we are going to have a lot of mentors and fellows and older professionals that are typically old white men, and that's okay. It is what it is.
It is what it is. But I think the way I always look at it is we've got to play with the cards we're dealt. And so how can we best leverage, and not to discount, Chad brought up the boomers. And again, sorry if anybody finds that as an offensive term. I don't mean it to be offensive. It's the generation, but we do have a lot to learn from generations ahead of us. Yeah. And I firmly believe that generations ahead of us have a lot to learn from the generations, especially as we skip generations backwards. And I think, you mentioned Janine Chastain a few minutes ago. I think that's we had this conversation at an airport somewhere, Janine and I did, where it's, I said, hey, listen, you could be the, what was it? The generation, that wasn't generation whisper, but maybe it was the millennial whisper or something. We were talking about how to increase communication between generations. And I think that's a real key. I mean, you've got the Bridge Mentorship program. I don't know where that name came from, but I think there needs to be a bridge which the generations can travel back and forth across.
Yep. That's where the name came from, for sure. Yeah. And I do agree. I think that our fellows, older mentors are learning a tremendous amount from the, influx of the diverse population that we're having coming into mentorship relationships and programs. So it's been really great. And, the mentors are interested in learning from them for sure. And I think that's all it takes is, is an interest in another person.
Yeah. I'm glad it's playing out that way. We're right at the top of the hour. So this hour went very, very quickly. So as we wrap this up, Carl, thinking about this community of small firm, generally entrepreneur architects, what's something that anybody or everybody in this room today, or anybody that watches the replay in the future, what's something that they can and should do? Let's take it from two directions. If they think they need a mentor, they're looking for a mentor, what's one thing they can do? But then also, what's one thing they can do to be a mentor for somebody else?
Yeah, I think fundamentally is, getting connected to more people. I know that networking is a dirty word and an uncomfortable thing for most people, but and it was for me for a long time. But I mean, that's just the biggest way is just getting out there and finding, those people that need a mentor or want to be a mentor. And whether it's AIA events or, local universities, community colleges, even, there are even, just other programs that you can volunteer with, like Project Pipeline through NOMA. They have chapters all over the country. I think most people would be, surprised at how many local programs there are that they can simply volunteer, get out there, put in some time and effort. And that's the way that you meet other people that are like-minded. They're also, again, interested in mentoring or, finding a mentor. That's really the best way, to speak specifically to small firms, small firm owners. The Small Firms Exchange, particularly here in Chicago, I think has been great. A friend of mine who was the national chair, Matt Clapper, he just started a Slack channel for the local Small Firms Exchange. And it's a place where a sole proprietor can hop on there and say, geez, I could really use help with contracts. Does anybody have any experience with X, Y, and Z? And I think that, that's a really great way to knit people together. I just believe so much in the power of relationships and networks, and they take a long time to build. But once they're there, it takes very little effort to maintain it or to grow it. And so I'm trying to be part of networks, but also grow my own as well. And that's been the biggest benefit of Bridge is we have this now 13-year long, network of people who have gone through the program. And they're all over the city at, every firm that you could name. And we're all kind of on the same page in one way or another.
All that talk about networking, we're going to have to bring Julie Brown back as a guest. For those of you that haven't seen or heard that interview with Julie Brown. I mean, this goes back, I guess, probably at least a year, maybe a year and a half now. But Julie is Boston-based. She has a great channel. All of her YouTube, her Instagram, everything, her podcast, her book about networking in the AEC world it's all good. Now, if you get offended or uncomfortable about language, then just be forewarned. You just look at the name of her podcast and you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's really, really good content. It's good, helpful stuff that will help you with what Carl is talking about. If you're uncomfortable about it, go listen to Julie. She's gonna pull that rug out from under you and figure out how to get you comfortable with it. Carl, this has been great. I appreciate everything that you're doing with all of these programs that you're working on and the public speaking and getting people involved with mentorship in both directions. And I appreciate you joining us here today.
Thank you so much. It's all a work in progress, as is my career. But
It's everybody's.
It was my way to make a difference and to find some fulfillment in my own career with my own time. And it's been great so far. And I just hope I can contribute to other people and encourage them to do the same.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you are. It's fantastic what you're doing. And Mandy, we can't leave without saying thank you for co-hosting today. It's been great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to fill in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you. And to all of you out there in the audience, I say this just about every week, but thank you. Without you making context and clarity a thing, we wouldn't be having this conversation with Carl right now. You may have noticed, if you're familiar with EntreArchitect, if you're familiar with context and clarity, you may have noticed an awful lot of parallels between what Carl was saying and what goes on inside our communities here. So that's reassuring. I think those are good things. And I encourage you to go check out what Carl is working on and wherever you are. You know, this is a big takeaway. Wherever you are, there's a program. So go find it. Carl mentioned there's been a lot of acronyms, right? A lot of AIA acronyms, but he also mentioned NOMA. We mentioned ACE in the opening. There's a lot of programs out there that are non-AIA. If you're not a member or you don't want to be a member for whatever reason, there's more out there for you to get involved with. So a little Google search will probably go a long way in that regard. So again, thank you all for making this a thing. As we look forward to next week, we're going to wrap up our week of talking about mentoring tomorrow, both at 9 a.m. Eastern on Clubhouse and then 4 p.m. Eastern inside the EntreArchitect Community Facebook group with one final conversation about mentoring for the week. And then as we look ahead to next week, our guest for Context and Clarity Live will be Antoinette Bunkley of Co-Architects. She's also a speaker for the upcoming EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting. So we'll talk with Antoinette next week about doing the right thing. So that's going to be an interesting conversation. So join us right back here, wherever you're watching right now. We're going to be back here 4 p.m. Eastern next Thursday to talk with Antoinette Bunkley. So check that out. Again, Carl, thank you very much for joining us. Mandy, thank you for co-hosting. To all of you out there, again, thanks. Please be well, stay safe, find a little bit of time to breathe, relax, find a way to rejuvenate. We do this every day, so you got to pace yourself. It's a long journey. Thanks for going on it with us, and we'll see you again tomorrow, everybody. Thanks.